and people are just milling out with the crowds like nothing's going on. And really, I think we are in that critical period where the cases are going to build up very quickly. But certainly don't want to ignore this because what we've got going on is unprecedented. And I just hope you all are staying safe. We've started our precautions back in March 10th. No contact with anybody outside the family. So we're good here. So hopefully we can keep doing these videos for you for a while. I'm certainly committed here. So checking out the situation across the U.S. today, we've seen the West Coast really calm down a bit. Just kind of a very stagnant pattern across California and Nevada. And that front that we had across Texas has swept through and left a stationary front on the tail end right there. This is pretty common. The fronts tend to get hung up in the Rocky Mountain region around Albuquerque where they still have an east wind gusting to 27 there. So that front is just past Albuquerque, but has not quite made it any further west. Same thing around Buena Vista, Trinidad. They get easterly winds there. So the front has made it through the passes, but not through the Continental Divide area. Hasn't quite gotten that far. Here's the picture in the southeastern U.S. Probably the leading edge of this new weather system is that outflow pool along the Appalachian region. You can see a very strong contrast from temperatures in the upper 70s and lower 80s to cool, humid upper 60s in places like Chattanooga, Huntsville, and Nashville. And back behind it, I think that's where our true cold front is. So in between, that's kind of an outflow area. And down in Texas, northerly winds, cool weather, and cloudy skies. And here's how it looks in the northeastern U.S. Occluded system in Quebec there, 991 millibar low, with an occluded front extending down through upstate New York. And back behind it, some very cold weather when you get into Ontario and Minnesota, teens and 20s in that area, and some blowing snow in Ontario. And in the UP of Michigan, got some snow coming down there. So getting a taste of winter here, only a couple more weeks until April. And then back in the Dakotas, wow, that's some cold air, teens, but some sunshine helping to cut through that cold weather. And there you go for the Pacific Northwest, high pressure across the Dakotas. And there's that return flow on the Great Plains. It is cold, 20s there in Montana, but it is coming out of the south. There's that stationary front again in the Rocky Mountain region and some fairly nice weather in the Pacific Northwest, 40s and 50s, and a bit of a break before the next storm. We know that that's on the way. To see what's driving the weather, we can look at the hemispheric plot here, showing kind of a split stream pattern. You can see that one branch down there near Baja California up to the southern U.S., running about like that, and then the northern stream going across Alaska and down to central Canada and Quebec. Now, it's very common when we get these lows off the Californian coast, we see some very strong ridging up in Alaska, but not so. That's because of this split stream pattern that we've got going on. Also, the trough out there in California, very well developed, and it's broken up into 3 vortices there. A couple short waves extending south out of there, kind of like that, and there's probably a few more down there in Texas, and that's what's helping to drive the rain whenever we get these cold fronts. And let me draw that cold front. This is transposed from that surface chart. Cold air mass looking about like that, so all this is polar air. And what happens is when you get this southwesterly flow set up like this, going right over the cold air, that gives you a very good setup for precipitation and clouds, especially in this area here. And that's often responsible for a lot of the snowstorms we see in the southern plains during the winter. Very same setup, but with temperatures about 30 to 40 degrees colder. And let's take a sneak peek at how things are going to change going into the weekend. Well, our trough off the west coast continues to spin, while the northern stream sends down a series of major shortwaves. There's 1, 2, 3, and we know that as these come out of that broad ridging in Alaska, those are going to amplify as they come into the northern U.S. So, in fact, it looks like even that one in British Columbia starts heading southward into the west coast trough, and that'll help amplify that a little bit. So by midweek, it looks like that main one of those lows out there moves eastward, and then the next trough is on the way, and that digs in there, and then by late in the week, we've got that strong southwesterly flow once again across Texas. And like I said, if we have a cold dome across Texas, that means rain and precip. If we have southerly flow bringing up high dew points, in other words, a warm pattern, that can mean thunderstorms. So we'll see what we get. And then going into next weekend, looks like unsettled weather in the central plains, very broad zonal flow across the U.S. That'll help get that lee side troughing going and possibly start advecting up good moisture from the Gulf. And yeah, here's another trough, so I think we're getting into a little bit of a stormy pattern in the central U.S. and certainly out east also. And more digging going on out west in the first week of April. And more southwesterly flow. Man, if this was late April or May, we'd probably have a lot of severe weather events to follow. So now that we have a good idea what's going on, we can look at this visible satellite imagery for the southwest U.S. We know that there's very strong troughing along the west coast, so this is all going to be unstable air due to the height falls and cooler temperatures in the mid-levels. In fact, looks like even a little bit of rotation right there in the southern Nevada deserts. In the south-central U.S., the front is on its way out, the outflow boundary running about like that with the main polar front back in here. So a lot of the clouds we have are anvil debris from the MCS associated with those boundaries. And you can see the backside of it right there over the Fort Worth, Oklahoma City area. And then on the other side, this is all stratocumulus, cold, humid air back there behind the front, getting a little bit of lift. And you can see the upslope flow starting to develop there already in Colorado. In the southeast U.S., another warm day. Looks a little bit like summer. Very extensive cumulus field out there, and temperatures are quite warm. I'm sure a lot of people are anxiously awaiting the approach of cool air. And it's there. It'll make it. It's just a matter of time. Same thing in the northeast U.S., another weather change on the way. And wow, look at that. Look at that lake effect stratocumulus right there off of Lake Michigan. Develops these extensive stratocu bands and it goes all the way to Lake Superior there. Very impressive. So there's probably, I don't know what the temperatures are running up there, possibly some rain or snow showers up there in Michigan. And we know that the occluded front runs from Quebec down to, occluded fronts aren't brown. Yeah, let's try pink. I've only got 5 colors to work with here. Cold front, that starts in Pennsylvania and goes down like that. And then we have that warm front dividing the near 80s weather in the D.C. area from the 60s and 70s in the New York City area. And wow, yeah, frozen lakes up there. See those? Still very cold up there in Canada. The northern plains, cloudy, or is that clouds? No, it's not. For one thing, look at that. You can see little rivers in there. See that right there? And it's also stationary with these animations. So these are actually snowfields. Very good one there around the Sioux City area, out to central Nebraska. Another snowfield in North Dakota, out to the Fargo area. So it's one thing you got to keep in mind working with this imagery. Wisconsin under the effect of that lee side, that lake effect stratocumulus there, and then more clouds coming in from the west with the height falls, with all that troughing out there to the west. And out there in the Pacific Northwest, a beautiful day in between weather systems, but there is that troughing off the west coast, and you can see that little low spinning around out there down at the bottom. And there's some stratus and stratocumulus fields right offshore. For tonight, we're going to be under the influence of that high pressure there in the Dakotas. There it is right there. Cold front will be gradually working its way southward. Some MCSs out there around the Atlanta, Birmingham area. So it'll look kind of like that right there. And things are unsettled on the west coast due to all that troughing. By tomorrow night, high pressure continuing to cover eastern Canada and the Great Lakes area. Looks like a little wave developing along the front in the southern Carolina area. So we're going to get probably set up kind of like that. That lee side troughing is developing aggressively in southern Colorado, so we're going to develop a little bit of a low in that area. And a little bit of the overrunning in clouds start picking up there in Texas. And you can kind of see the southwesterly flow aloft looking at the thickness lines. The thickness lines, they tend to loosely follow the upper level pattern. So with this band of thickness lines right there, that's indicating that southern stream flow like that, up and over the top of the cold dome there in Texas. So here's what we're looking at for Sunday. The warm front will be moving northward through Texas. So we're establishing that return flow off the Gulf. You can see it right there, bringing that moisture and warm air northward. There's also a bit of return flow in the Carolinas into the Midwest. See that right there? It's a little bit of a colder return flow. And embedded in that looks like a little trough moving through the Ohio area. It's probably kind of moving north into the Indianapolis, Chicago area. So that'll get a few snow bands going in that area. And off the California coast, there's our new system. It's mostly an elevated mid-level low, probably a cold barotropic system, and that'll cross the Rockies rapidly overnight. See that moving into the Las Vegas area in the morning, crossing the Rockies, getting some snow going in Utah during the day on Monday, and then by evening we're looking like that right there. So there's our disturbance there moving into Colorado, and the height falls ahead of that are helping to develop this baroclinic low there in Kansas. So it looks like we're developing a frontal system kind of like that, maybe getting the dry line going from Amarillo down to Midland. I don't know if we have the moisture to support storms in that area. And looks like things are also going downhill in the Pacific Northwest. You can see evidence of a system there coming together in Montana. See that cold air advection there in Oregon, and that antifront setup starting to take effect with an extensive precip band there in the Washington or Oregon area. And off the East Coast, there goes a little outgoing system there off the New Jersey coast, and that'll probably work its way eastward, getting a little wraparound activity in the New York City area. So here you can see the return flow getting really strong there in Texas and Oklahoma. So it'll be a warm day in that area. And then for Tuesday, you can see that strong southern stream. See that right there in the thickness lines, painting out something like that there. So we know the winds aloft are going to be kind of strong. Frontal setup looks kind of like that. Let me see if I can draw this out. Yeah, there we go. It's kind of a complicated setup with multiple fronts. I guess this is probably more of a lee side system there in Colorado. But definitely bear clinic development in the Southern California deserts, also in the Midwest around Illinois. A little warm front return flow area, some damming there in South Carolina. And up in the Dakotas, looks like a new Alberta clipper trying to come down through that area. This might be that system that came out of the Pacific Northwest, maybe a little bit of a northern stream system going up there. Well, that's quite a mess there, and then it looks like maybe for Wednesday. Complicated because of the split flow. Looks like that Dakota system moves up into the Hudson Bay area, and then on the tail end, I guess that's probably part of it there in Iowa. But it looks like our Pacific system also comes out in New Mexico. Ahead of it, some strong downslope flow in Texas. And back behind it, there's all that destabilization due to the height falls in that area. Once we get the sun coming up, heating that terrain, we get clouds and snow showers going up in the Great Basin area. And then just a quick look ahead. Dry, cold front into Texas. The Great Plains system moves up into the Great Lakes. A little bit of convection in the Appalachian region. And then, yeah, it looks like that cold high kind of builds into Texas, driving some cold air south, pushes the front down into the Gulf Coast area. And then, let's see, going into the weekend, 9 to 10 days from now, I guess the southern stream starts picking up there over that cold dome, which is located something like that right there. And then the northern stream looks like that gets active. And that's what I'm seeing up there in Canada. And then a quick look ahead. Looks like a little bit of rain in the Gulf Coast area. Very pronounced damming in the Carolinas area. See right there? The mountains are located in that region right there. So the cold air is kind of like stuck there, unable to advect northward into Ohio. So it just kind of piles up there and forms that ridge. And out on top of that, looks like it's cold enough for a little bit of freezing precip around the Lynchburg area. So that's going to be Sunday or Saturday the 28th, and then going into the 29th and 30th. Looks kind of like an unsettled pattern. And then for the 4th, yeah, that's probably a little bit of cold bias in the GFS. But it looks like we're going to have our hands full with weather systems. I guess you aren't going to mind that. So we'll check it out tomorrow. And that gets into another thing. Yeah, I gave you a little bit of a gift here. We weren't planning to come back on today. I was going to take a break, but I figured, you know, news headlines are kind of a mess, and we're not getting a whole lot of work done right now anyway. So why not do the video? So we went ahead and did that. We may take a break unexpectedly here and there. If our video doesn't come out, just be patient and give it another day or two. And we'll just kind of see how our time works out. And if we can, we'll do a forecast. And feel free to send in submissions. I may not be able to get to them immediately, but if you have ideas for what you want to cover, any charts like that, such as the precipitable water. Yeah, the precipitable water. We didn't quite cover that, but you can see there's 1 to 2 inch amounts out there in Louisiana, Texas, and this is kind of a good way of tracking the moisture. You can see there's really not a Pineapple Express. Most of the moisture we're working with is coming out of the Gulf. And let's see, do we get any deep moisture surges? It's pretty hit or miss. Yeah, see, it looks like by the 28th, some of it tries to stack up there in the Gulf Coast, but this persistent northeasterly flow, northerly flow, all these highs coming out of Canada, they keep pushing the moisture back out to the Gulf, so it doesn't really have a chance to build up in the Great Plains. Strong return flow for the 31st. That may bring some of it northward. But this is a good sign that we're still pretty early in the season. Looks like a good surge there around the 5th, but that's 384 hours out. But, if that pans out, that could be the first of our spring weather outbreaks. So we'll keep an eye there on the 5th of April. And hopefully the pandemic's not going too bad then. But I will say I'm very concerned looking at the numbers. Hopefully it doesn't. I don't know. We'll just see how things go and take it a day at a time. I think that's the best thing we can do. Anyway, thank you for joining the Weathercast. Hopefully we'll see you all in the next day or two. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.